city didn't have the funds to install speed bumps, they raised the money and had them installed themselves. But those speed deterrents were short-lived. Fox 2's Randy Wembley is live now to tell us why. Randy.
Hey guys, basically it came down to policy, procedures, red tape, if you will. This is where those speed humps used to be. The city recently took them up. Neighbors here telling me this was the only thing stopping drivers from speeding down this street. Lichfield Road in Green Acres is much like any other residential street in Detroit. There are a lot of kids who live here, and some drivers treat it like a freeway.
We have people that have gone by here at 50, 60 miles an hour.
We all been complaining because it's hard for the kids to be outside playing, and these cars are flying up and down the street.
People living on this block say they've pleaded with the city for years to install speed humps, but nothing was done. The reckless driving continued. Residents were fed up, and a group of dads on Lichfield said enough was enough.
We decided just to fund ourselves and raise the funds and put the speed humps here on our street.
They raised $2,000, bought speed humps, and installed them. They were a bit shorter than the humps the city uses, so they would not damage cars, and spaced out just enough for emergency vehicles.
So it was a quality install, it was done right, and they were small, and they were working.
It was the quietest couple of days I've had on the street since we moved here in 2017. People saw it coming, they would slow down like you're supposed to, and they would stay that speed going further on.
But the quiet was short-lived. The city's Department of Public Works removed the speed humps 4 days later. What's it been like since the speed bumps have come up?
Since the speed bumps have come up, the speeders are back.
We knew that it would be easier to ask forgiveness than permission. When we were putting them in, we knew we weren't supposed to. But we didn't think they'd come and take them, especially not 4 days later.
You just can't go onto city streets and make determinations on your own to alter the roadway.
Ron Brundage heads up the Department of Public Works and says a traffic engineering study has to be done to determine the best way to address speeding vehicles. He says the city received 7,000 requests for speed humps, but can only install about 1,200 this year, and it's prioritizing streets around schools and parks where they have the highest rates of pedestrians and kids. Is there any sort of scenario where if they mimic the exact specs that the speed cushions that the city installs, that they could do the same if they desire to do so, if they raise the money on their own? Is there any way that could happen?
So right now, there's not a process for that. What we want...
Should there be?
Right now, there's not a process. We want every neighborhood to go through the same process and request a speed cushion through the City of Detroit's website.
For years, there was just absolutely no response to this, and so it's just, what are we supposed to wait for? So, like Jim said, someone to get hurt?
The city has to change the system. I mean, the system itself is broken. So what needs to be done is create a department where community can raise their own fund and then put their own speed bumps. I mean, instead of waiting on these waiting lists.
Now, the director of the Department of Public Works, he mentioned and made a point during our interview that the city has to be consistent and it has to be fair when dealing with issues like this. There are a number of neighborhoods, communities within the city of Detroit that simply don't have the resources, the funds for residents to come together and spend the money to install speed humps like the ones that were put into place here. But others would counter and say, while not an apples-to-apples comparison, isn't that the same situation with something like Project Greenlight? So this definitely raises questions about how exactly city services should be handled if the city does not have the resources to do something, and yet an individual community or neighborhood or block in this instance does, and should they be able to? Hewell, Taryn?
All right, Randy. Thank you for that.